But I love this whole inner voice approach because really all we're doing is going in and we're having awareness of the body. Like we access the inner voice through the body. So I feel like this, again, I'd love to hear what you think, but my impression of this release you're talking about is really just taking the time and the space and the focus to just be with the sensations in the body.
Welcome to the Hope, Health, and Wellness Advocacy Podcast, informing and empowering you with Tara Adams. Hi, and welcome to the Hope, Health, and Wellness Advocacy Podcast. I am so happy today to have our guest, an inner voice facilitator that does coaching and somatic healing. She calls herself an intuitive healing guide, helping curious minds to live from their inner wisdom for more ease, clarity, and pleasure. Thank you for coming and sharing with me today, Lorna, and talking with me today, Lorna Stell. Hi,
Hi.
Lorna. So I'm so happy to have you on here today. You know, I've been excited since you agreed to come on here. You and I have worked together, and I love to share my experiences with others. I didn't know that what you offer exists, and it came at such a really pivotal time for me. You and I worked together last summer. My mom had passed, my son had graduated high school, and I had just had the worst COVID session that I'd had yet. And my life was just in a whirlwind. I didn't know what was happening. I couldn't get my footing anywhere. And I was having a hard time with kind of uh, accessing my inner voice, although I don't know that I called it inner voice at that time, but just kind of getting to that meditative state of knowing and kind of getting some answers or direction, feeling good about things. It just felt like it dropped off the face of the earth. I couldn't get there. And I reached out to you, and you and I went through sessions that were very pivotal in my grief and change and all the things that I was going through, things I didn't even know that I needed to go through and address. And so that's something I'd like for us to talk about today and to share with others is this opportunity to maybe address certain areas in their life that they don't even know they can face it this way. And so I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about what it is you do from your description as an inner voice coach.
Yeah. Well, beautiful intro. Yeah, I always love hearing your story because it's so juicy. There was so much transformation in there.
Yeah.
And so glad to be able to support you through that. And yeah, so let's start with like, what is the inner voice? I always like to start there
Yes.
because it's really one term for like, there are many terms for the same thing. So if you think of like your higher self, that's a really common term. For those who might be familiar with Abraham Hicks, you hear them talk a lot about the inner being. Um, I personally feel like it very well could be the Holy Spirit. So it's really this like in layman's terms, like your inner knowing, your inner wisdom. If we want to get deeper into that, the way I describe it to people is it's you. It's not some like mysterious entity necessarily, but it's you essentially at the deepest level, which means it's underneath your limiting beliefs and your fears and what a lot of people might call your conditioning, meaning like, or maybe like how you were socialized, so to speak. So, like things your parents taught you, things teachers taught you, whatever. Um, Essentially it's like this like almost like programming that we receive usually between the ages of or anything before the age of 7 more or less. So we become sponges, we soak all that up, and that sort of becomes like our operating system for the rest of our life until we rewire some things. um, so your inner voice is essentially what I call you underneath all of that stuff, and it's that part of you that exists from unconditional love, peace, and presence. And it usually feels like a sense of calm. It might feel really joyful, really loving. but it's this really deep part of us that for many of us, we have trouble accessing when we're in exactly that kind of state you described of like, we're in a lot of grief or we're in like things that are mentally really challenging or emotionally really challenging. So essentially, all I do more or less is help people to access that level of themselves. So I don't really, it's so funny because in these sessions like you and I did, I don't really do that much. I'm just there to guide a little bit. I do call myself a facilitator in many cases because I'm just there to help guide and like help foster that connection, but I'm not really creating anything. Like if someone comes to me as my client, they're they're creating the whole experience. I'm just there to sort of hold that container for it to happen. Um, and yeah, just to like help maintain their focus in that area of their consciousness, if that makes sense. So there's sort of the facilitating side where we do what I call these vitality activation sessions, like you and I did, where it's like pure inner voice for 90 minutes. And we're just getting really deep into that connection. And then the coaching side is where we're sort of talking more like mind to mind about okay, so how do we like live from this place in daily life? So this is what a lot of people do is they experience their inner voice in these deeper vitality activation sessions. And then, yeah, some people want to go deeper with that or draw out that experience and have it be more foundational for their whole life. And that's where the coaching piece comes in. So all of it's inner voice, just a couple of different ways to, for me to support people in that.
I love so much how you explained the inner voice. It was such an eloquent I don't think I've ever heard you explain it, before, not like that,
Yeah.
or it hit different because, I love that you said that from your perspective, could even be the Holy Spirit, and that really helped me because, I know that a lot of people watching, a lot of the, audience that I have, spans all types of religions and spirituality, and I too kind of find myself wondering, is this, where did this come from? But I definitely feel comforted as someone of faith that this is okay. This isn't, some uh weird, spooky, whatever, or made up. And that was something that you and I discussed at one point. Is that I thought, how do I know this isn't just me? This isn't just me making this up. And the feedback or the information that we worked together in these sessions definitely was not something that was at all at least conscious. I can tell you that it would have been completely deeply hidden subconscious to come up and to be able to give me kind of the insight or the intel that we got. And I do want to say, I know that you are very humble in saying what your role is in these sessions, but I tell you, it's different. I mean, I told you, without you and without your help, I found it very difficult to get to the same place. And I do think that if, it didn't work out for me with the time wise, but I still have on my agenda to kind of work with you on a more intense level to get to where I can do it on my own without having to have a session where you kind of walk me through it, but you kind of train me in that area is kind of how I understand those coaching sessions. But yeah, you are instrumental in being able to kind of give that safety and support and sort of direction into how to get myself into that feeling and that receptivity, I guess, if you want to say, for getting accessing the knowing and then feeling safe to get the answers that sometimes you get that maybe you aren't prepared for or don't know. I mean, in my case especially, and just for those watching, I mean, I am definitely sharing today my experience with Lorna, and I've given her permission to use my sessions as kind of a a way to explain for people and kind of to know and understand what does a inner voice session look like. Because I'll be honest with you, I've never experienced anything like this before. I didn't know really what this was, or how to expect what was going to happen. But I have to say, it's been my experience, and I've told Lorna this multiple times, very helpful, very supportive, came at the exact right time for me, because it helped facilitate my grief. It helped facilitate my changes in life, my roles, my uh, being able to access direction and focus and kind of make sense of things as they were coming up for me. And there were things that I think in our very first session, Lorna, that we sort of, I don't know how you want to call it, like blew the smoke out of the tailpipe that had been there for like probably my whole life, really. I mean, there was something that released that had been needing to be released for, gosh, I mean, I decades. But and when we say release, like I can imagine, like if I was watching this, like what does that mean, release? Like did you toot, did you throw up, did you like your head spin around and pea soup come out? Like what are we talking about, release, right? And so for me in that particular session, as I recall it, which has been almost a year ago, um it was just a tremendous feeling from head to toe of something that had been there, just bottled up. And when it released, that feeling was uh, on all levels. It was physical, it was mental, it was emotional. I can't remember if I cried, but I definitely was very emotional and definitely just felt lighter and like I was able to tackle some topics after that. And I didn't even realize that's what we were, we don't go into these sessions, or we didn't, with agendas. We just kind of went in, we might say, like I'm dealing with grief issues, or, this is kind of how I'm feeling down, feeling, don't know what I want to do, don't know what's happening. Um, but we didn't set an agenda as to what we were going to talk about or focus on. And so that just happened, and that being my first session with you was pretty amazing. I thought it was really helpful. So, um, again, you were instrumental in helping with that and supporting and helping me not feel scared of what might come up, because you don't always necessarily like some of the things that come up, at least in my experience. Um, so you explained who the inner voice is, and I appreciate that. So is being a healing guide separate from this, or is it kind of, I know it's kind of harder to describe and explain. Is that separate from this? Is this part of it? Is it you're there to kind of be whatever is needed in the moment? Can you kind of explain that a little bit better?
Yeah, so I do call myself that sometimes, a healing guide. And it's one of those things where it's like I feel like every day that goes by that I do this work, because I connect with my own inner voice on a very regular basis too. I have my own practice. So I feel like every day that goes by, I'm like, everything is connected. Like it is such an illusion that anything is not connected to anything else. So, let's say someone comes in and they're like, I really want to like get with my inner voice about money. Surprise, maybe relationships are going to come up. And then you find like your what's it called, like your resistance, things like that, restrictions around money might loosen up once you look at relationships. And so it's just an arbitrary example, but yeah, so it's just one of those things where like really all of this is healing work. And what you're talking about with this like quote unquote release, really all we're doing, I want to be so clear that I hope you agree with this, you can tell me, but I've heard people say that it feels like a very gentle process. um, so we're not going in with like we're gonna take a substance and like your body's just gonna react. And like this is my impression of, doing something like ayahuasca, which I'm sure is like very potent and very needed for some people. But I love this whole inner voice approach because really all we're doing is going in and we're having awareness of the body. Like we access the inner voice through the body. So I feel like this, again, I'd love to hear what you think, but my impression of this release you're talking about is really just taking the time and the space and the focus to just be with the sensations in the body and let that be okay and feel them all. And like this is what I experience as a release, is, when I put off or try to avoid or like stuff those feelings, that's when they start to build and they become more of a release later. But I find like the sooner, the faster we just be with those things. It doesn't even always become a big release, but like you're saying, if you've never done this before, and maybe you've been on Earth for like 30, 40, 50, 60 years. I don't know. There might be some stuff in there, and that's okay, and that's totally normal. And any kind of release is really just feeling. It's just that for a lot of us, we're so discouraged from feeling. It's like such a taboo still societally, which is a little strange. But yeah, it's just one of those things where out in the world in your usual day-to-day life feeling, especially if you're gonna like cry in public or something, it's so people don't know what to do with that, right? So in these sessions, it's I love providing that safe space where there truly is no judgment for that. And I've had people sob, scream into a pillow, like probably punch a pillow. Like that's the other thing is we have video off, so I don't even know really. Like it's all your experience. You're allowed to have it. And I'm just there to like be there as like the voice through the headphones. Yeah, so it's totally okay to feel it all, and there's no judgment about it, and that's where that release comes with the permission, I feel. So yeah, feel free if you if you resonate with any of that, I'd love to know.
Well, I do. I mean, there's a lot that came up for me when you were talking about that because, for one, you talked about gentle, and in that session, that release was gentle and yet powerful. So I think it's hard to describe, and so you're right. I want to do it justice to make sure that people understand. It's not like, um, and to give you some background on it, I've uh, been diagnosed with PTSD, PTSD. I can't say it. I'm so traumatized by it. And a lot of that stemmed originally in childhood with, all kinds of abuse, verbal, physical, sexual, all of it. So to say that I have a lot of trauma and a lot of things that were not spoken, not felt, dissociation was a big part of growing up. And so EMDR is a therapy technique that is often touted for trauma patients and is something that I tried unsuccessfully. And that's not considered a very um, intense or how did you say it? It's not a painful process necessarily, typically. And just for people that don't know, EMDR is essentially you're talking with a therapist that should be trained in this, and you are going through some sort of trauma event that you've experienced. And as you're reliving that, the idea is that originally in the trauma, you kind of froze and all of this happened, you got overwhelmed, you didn't process it, so you're kind of stuck and frozen in time. So you go back to relive this moment with someone there who either there's different ways they can do it. They can tap on your knees, they can tap on your hands, they can have a device in your hands, but something that keeps you like tethered in the moment so that you feel empowered and you process it. And the idea is once you process it, you now have released that. You don't, it's no longer keeping you in a frozen state or where you're triggered and you're reliving it all the time. And for a lot of people that works. Studies show it helps a lot of people. I did not have that experience. My experience was actually that the person that performed it with me allowed me to stay in a dissociative state. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't have that word at the time, but since I found out. And for me, my experience was for a week, I felt like I was in my body, but living through the time of abuse and trauma. And like in the moments of that, eventually ended up having a stroke. It was that traumatic for me. So when you talk about gentle, yes, this was far more gentle and, like I said, powerful. And I didn't have to go to that place. I don't know what I released, but I know it needed to be released, and I'm glad it released. And I feel like um, it just made a difference for me in being able to move on and to get on with the process that we worked through, to be able to grieve and process that, and to process all the different areas that we did. So yes, it is gentle. I did like it. I liked it preferable to my experience with EMDR. Not putting down EMDR, but I do think people should know that there is a risk that you should see someone that is qualified, that's been licensed in it, that is, experienced in it, and recognized if you come away from a session and you're not, I don't think people really know that. And I think that's something that's not talked about. I have heard other people share stories similar to that. So just adding that out there for those that don't know, if they're looking for trauma, help. And I guess I would like to ask you, while we're talking about that, would you say that this is really good for those with PTSD or CPTSD or any kind of trauma work?
Well, I can say that, there's people like you. You're not my only client who has been diagnosed with something like that and has had a positive experience. And there are other practitioners that I know who do this work with the same like type of inner voice modality, who say the same thing. Also, people with like ADHD, like, different like areas on the neurodivergent spectrum. So I'm not necessarily an authority on like it works for these diagnoses and not these ones or whatever. I always just say if you're interested in it, try it. Because I haven't really had anyone have a negative experience. Like maybe they feel like, oh, I don't know, there's no connection or something, and they need a little more time with it maybe. But yeah, I would say it's gentle to the point that I haven't really had anyone like experience harm from it that I know of. So, and the other thing about it too is it's really like a guided meditation. Like that's kind of also a thing
Mm.
we could maybe compare it to if anyone's familiar with meditation. So, I have heard people say like out in the world, like closing your eyes for meditation, like that doesn't work for me. I don't feel safe doing that. So anyone like that, I would say you could do something like this where you just have your eyes open with a soft gaze. I've had people do that. Um, so I think it can be adapted to what you need if you're familiar with your body and your nervous system. But also like if there's any hesitation about it, like being right for you, totally like go down a different path that feels more right for you. I definitely don't want to give the impression that like it's a fix all silver bullet for all the things all the time. I think it works really well for a lot of things, so I'm biased, but yeah, I don't want to say it's like this, yeah, like silver bullet type end all be all type thing either. I think it's a great option for the right people.
Mm.
And I also think there are so many different healing modalities because there are so many different humans on the planet that are all different. And I think it's great that there are so many options. So this is just another one that's an option for people.
I really agree with that. And I agree that, I don't know what, um, whatever the inner voice or healing or the somatic, however this fits into, because it fits into different categories, I feel like. But I feel like that you were definitely like, you live and breathe this literally, and you really know this. And so I felt like you really had a command of being able to walk me through it and support me, even during the times when it was like, ooh, this stuff's coming up and I don't know if I want to address this, and but
Hmm.
you helped me and supported me, and like I felt safe. And that's something that in all of the trauma-based therapies, workshops, counseling, self-help books, all the things, sometimes the areas they take you to, particularly when they're wanting you to relive these areas, it's very difficult. I can tell you that I've gone to other counselors where we would try something that wasn't EMDR, but I would get so worked up that I would get like an instant migraine. I could feel my blood pressure just rocket, and
Mm.
the therapist was like, okay, we just shut down, abort, we won't do that. And so I did find it amazing. I think I remember having that comment with you, is that as powerful as this is, and as many things as we were able to focus on, I felt safe. And that is something that is kind of difficult, I would say, for most people with PTSD or CPTSD. And, it's a very vulnerable state to try to work through. So that safety is so important. So I really appreciated that. And so we've kind of been talking about it. And I had told you when we were talking about doing this, I kind of wanted to walk through the process a little bit, at least as the way that I did it, and what I would think someone could expect if they were to do it. Because I am someone, because I have done so many things at this point, that I really like to know, what is this going to look like, and have no surprises, or little to no surprises. Or if there is surprises, it's surprises that came from me, not from, oh, and by the way, now we're going to have to sing this and hold hands with a bunch of people and whatever. Like I don't dig that. So my experience with you in one of our sessions was that we would kind of talk and get kind of comfortable. We were doing video like this. We did Zoom, but I don't know if you do anything else, but Zoom was how we did it. And just, I have a laptop, so that allowed me to do it in different places at different times. I remember I did that, and it was very comfortable to do it in my bedroom, in my bed, because sometimes it allowed me to get in different positions, because sometimes laying down kind of felt nice, but then sometimes kind of being in a different position, like being up and kind of, I don't know, it took different forms for me. And I liked that ability to kind of get wherever and comfortable. Plus my bedroom feels kind of safe and secure. And so we would look at each other in the beginning and talk and catch up. And then once we started, we cut both of our cameras off, but we could hear each other. And we'd start breathing. I would start with the breathing aspect. And that really helped me to calm my mind, kind of get into my body. I always requested that you kind of walk me through some visualizations, kind of getting into a relaxed state, getting into my body, kind of accessing where my knowing was, and kind of starting to talk to my knowing, be like, hey there, how you doing, what's going on. It wasn't quite as silly as that, but it was something along the lines of kind of like, hey, we're getting ready to kind of talk here. Let's, prime the pump, I guess you could say. And just kept breathing. And that breathing led into, we would get into questions. And what I really appreciated that I had difficulty with, is as you would ask a question, and I would start to receive signals, I guess we could say. I and you explained, and I'll let you explain this a little bit more in just a minute, but that whatever came up was okay. And if nothing came up, it was okay. But that if I saw something in my mind's eye, or if I felt something, to just communicate that to you so that you would know kind of what was going on. And so as I recall in our first session, and I think you reminded me earlier, there was no words. There was just sort of a feeling. And again, the first session was the one where I released quite a bit. And so I I was feeling things. I remember feeling things in my stomach. I remembered kind of feeling things in my heart and my chest, particularly in that one, because I felt like there was, um, to me, visually, it felt like a big red, almost like a rock that had been stagnant in there. And that's visually, that's what it felt like. Now, clearly, that's not what happened. And against all of my wishes, I had hoped that that would include some weight loss in there, because a big rock like that, holding that around, should weigh something. But alas, it did not. But it did give me just a big weight off my shoulders, and I could feel um, this powerful release of, like, I guess you just say it was like an amalgam of feelings. Like, it was angst, it was anger, it was sadness, it was, mad, it was all the feelings just kind of in a clump. And that just felt like it was gone, like I didn't have to deal with that anymore. And um it was really nice not really having to know. And I think you actually even supported that when I said, like, I don't know what that was. And you were like, and that's okay too. Like, you don't have to know. It's okay to just release and let it go. And I think honestly, that was huge for me as well, because most times, most therapies are about, well, what was that? What did we let go? And like you're taking inventory. Okay, we got rid of that one, so now we're going to work on these others. And that's very stressful for at least someone with my background. So um, in that one, there was a lot of visualization, a lot of physical feelings. And once we released, I think we kind of ended the session, and that was it for that session. And we just, I think we kind of talked a little bit at the end and let it go. And the great part about the sessions with you that I really appreciate is that you record them and you give access to these. And we were just talking about that before we got on here, is that in kind of reviewing those, um, my perspective on it is, when I'm in these sessions, there's so much going on for me. So there's like what I'm seeing in my mind, there's what I'm feeling, there's sometimes what I'm maybe hearing, or just like a knowing. There's um, sometimes smells. There's, I think I mentioned, I don't think there was taste, but I wouldn't put it past myself, because it just seemed like it was a multisensory sort of full body experience. And through that, there was a lot of, like, just, you got a ton of knowing and information, whether it was words or actual, like, someone talking to you, or just like you I felt it. I felt and I knew things because it referred to something that had happened. And I was like, oh, I think this means that. And this is coming up. And that's really weird. What would that be about? And you'd be like, it's okay. We don't have to know. And then it'd be like, oh, I do know, because this is, I'd be, and it would be so intense and so quick. And like, once the floodgates opened for information, it was like, things were coming out of my mouth quicker than I could even really process what we were saying. But then there was also like a feeling going behind it, like, oh, wow, okay, like, this is a new way to see this. This is a new way to have perception on an issue. This is, so there was so much. So getting back to the recordings is very helpful, because sometimes you say things that you don't remember saying, or um, you just can kind of get another perspective from the same session. And it's funny because, I was telling you before, on my end, there's so much going on. And it's just like, and I'm trying to explain as much as I can as it's happening, but sometimes there's a lot going on. And hearing it back, I hear it the way you must have heard it the first time, because it's like you're just hearing whatever I relay. It's a play by play, but sometimes it can be hard to relay the sights, sounds, the feelings, the knowings, the oh, and this means this and this, like it just blossoms. But it's so natural, to your point of the gentle. It's almost like you just unlock a piece of your brain that you didn't have access to. It's that gentle and ease of getting into. It's like, oh, we're opening that door, and oh, okay, now I get it, now I understand, now I see. And I feel like that was so helpful in my grieving process and in kind of understanding sort of my changing roles and my just trying to heal physically. Like there was every level of my being was trying to heal or um, recalibrate. And so this was just the perfect thing at the perfect time. And so that was my experience. Um, and so I guess I'd like to hear what you would say and add to that, that maybe I forgot. Maybe I'm so into the experience that I didn't explain it. And that may not be everybody's experience. So just because it's mine, I want to make sure that we kind of tell people what is within the realm of them experiencing a session with you.
Yeah. Well, so beautiful. Thanks for sharing some of those golden nuggets. Yeah, the other thing I might do here is just kind of like zoom out a little bit and look at like the what can someone expect from start to finish here.
Mhm.
So you, if we like zoom way out, like how'd you even find me? So you found me on Instagram. I remember we
Mhm.
first connected there, and I think we may have DM'd or emailed or something. So it was just a matter of like connecting, and you were able to book sessions through my website. But if ever anyone like had questions or hesitations or like, is this right for me? I'm always open for those conversations too. Um, so that can happen up front. And then once you do book, I like to send a questionnaire that's just a Google form, and it's just questions about like, okay, what's going on for you right now? And not necessarily that all of those things you tell me are going to come up in the session, but it just gives me as a, gives my thinking brain some context for how we can meet each other in those sessions. So you told me some of the things that were kind of on your plate that you wanted to look at, some general topics, some specific questions. I always want to know, like, do you have any questions for me? Anything you're worried about? Um, and I always like to know, like, what's your relationship with your body like right now? Because some people have done sort of more somatically oriented things, and some people are like, I can't stand my body. I hate it. It's such an inconvenience, so that it just gives me, again, like some sense of how people are showing up to this. It's all welcome, by the way. And then, yeah, so we just schedule a time. And when we show up, like you said, like we chat a little bit about some of those things in that questionnaire. And the reason like things in the session might flow a little differently than exactly those questions is because we essentially give the client's inner voice like full reign, as much as we can. I mean, sometimes in the beginning, I'm guiding a little bit more because we're still getting into the connection itself, and starting to like trust the body. Some people aren't even there yet, and that's fine. Um, so yeah, so we just start to get into that sort of facilitation role I was talking about before, where I'm kind of playing the role of the client's mind in a sense. So the thinking mind being the part of us that is questioning things, has the fears, has the hesitations, wants to like have control over things, understand what's going on, just in general be oriented to what's happening and have an understanding. And that's where I think some of those things come up. You were talking about like I don't even know what that was that I released. Like, do we need to know? Do we need to know all the stories and this thing happened when I was 5 and all that stuff? And so that's where like one of the primary things we're doing in these sessions is we're giving your thinking mind a vacation, as I like to say it. So that's sort of, we're easing into that at the top of these calls at the beginning of the sessions. I walk everybody through an intro that's, I think it's something like 8 minutes long, which sounds ridiculous, but it's this like, okay, step by step, baby step. Like most people have never done this before, like really let their mind, I don't want to say check out in the sense of like dissociating, like you were saying, but like rest, very deep rest, or like, okay, your mind is the thing that is usually running the show all day long. It's keeping you safe, it's helping you make decisions, it's trying to anticipate the future, all those things. So I walk you through like letting your mind rest, envisioning a vacation spot, however you like to do that. And then we start to walk through like, these are the things you can expect maybe to happen during this session. Maybe it's emotions coming up. And yeah, some of those things you touched on too, of like, if we do reach that inner voice level, which sometimes it takes people time, that's also fine. But if and when we do get there, it could be like literal words that feel like they want to come through. Like we might, that's where the inner voice name makes sense. But sometimes, like you said, it smells, it's like sensations in the body, it's a sense of knowing. Yeah, if you think of any like physical sense that you have, like sight, taste, smell, all those things, there's sort of like an intuitive version of that. So like internal seeing, like you said, in your mind's eye kind of thing. So I like to walk people through all of that. Like this isn't necessarily what everyone experiences in every session, but these are things that can come up. And then, yeah, I start to sort of play that role of the mind of like, hey, inner voice, what do you think about money? What do you think about like Tara's health right now, whatever it is? These specific questions, and we can start to listen in to that place in the body where your inner voice lives, and we learn how to do that in the sessions. And then, so essentially, I'm asking questions. All you have to do is hear them, and you feel for the answer in your body, which isn't going to make a lot of sense to your mind, probably listening to this until you experience it yourself. But that's what the process is. And so I find for clients, what's really helpful, and I get to experience this too as a client. Like I have friends that we like who are practitioners as well, and we trade sessions back and forth. So I get to experience this too, where the practitioner is again like sort of playing the role of the mind. I don't have to be in my mind at all. I don't have to think for like 90 minutes. It's great. And so I love to do that for my clients too, where you don't have to think about the questions because you know they're going to be delivered to you, and all you have to do is receive those answers. And it's okay if they make no sense, because again, like you said, we can listen to the recordings later, and either the knowing comes through at the time or you put the pieces together later. It's all sort of I don't know. I feel like the consciousness that we are is always evolving, and so sometimes the dots connect at a time we don't expect to. So um, yeah, and then after sessions complete, I always like to give the client's inner voice the option. Do you want to just stay where you are? Like sometimes people are very, very relaxed, very like floaty feeling, and they just want to stay there and just enjoy it, and that's great. Or they can sort of come back up and start thinking again if they want, and we can chat a little bit. Yeah, and then I like to check into, the next day, a few days later, just see how people are feeling, answer any questions that they have, and yeah. And then with brand new people, I like to do a series of sessions. So you did this with me, where we did three at a time, and so I find that just for me, I feel like it lifts the pressure off of like, we have to have this momentous transformation in one session. Like, we get a few, there's space, there's time. So I don't know if you felt that or if that's just me, but yeah.
No, I appreciated it because I didn't know what to expect going into it, particularly the first round of sessions. And that first session, as powerful as it was actually one of the sort of smaller sessions that we had. but it would have been good if it had been on its own. But having had three, you're right, it took some of the pressure off. So you talked a lot about uh, keeping the mind quiet and kind of the 8 minutes of intro. And I really found a lot of value in those 8 minutes, let me tell you, because uh, I'm surprised that it only took 8 minutes to get my mind to hush and to stop. And that was a huge part of the process too, and something that I came away with is being able to and it's something I knew but I didn't know what to do with, is a mind that just goes on forever. Like it never doesn't think and just talk, and just like it can even be annoying to me and it's in my head, right? So those 8 minutes of kind of talking through how do we get the mind to be okay and to feel like I'm safe for it to take a vacation, for it to go and just rest, take a little siesta, and we're going to go over here and we're going to work with the body. And it's something too that I've often said. I've worked 30 plus years. I hate saying how old I am and aging myself, but 30 plus years with therapy, counseling, self-help books, all these things to try to help with what took me years to even figure out that I had trauma. Um, and so working through that, it's been working through the mind. My mind can think through triggers and problems and things that bring me back to a place, but the body didn't attend those sessions, it doesn't feel like. And a lot of the health problems, a lot of the concerns I have, a lot of the nervous system problems is body related. So being able to do these sessions was really helpful and transformative in that regard. Being able to quiet the mind, didn't know it was possible, not for this mind especially. And then also being able to be so intimate with the body and really enveloped in the body, being in the body in the moment, and working through that. So um, again, I just think this is for certain people, especially if they've been through sort of kind of what I have been. You've had these uh, really serious diagnoses, you've really put in a lot of work, time, effort, money, resources, but you're not where you want to be. I would really recommend sessions like this to try it. And I love how you were very open. I stalked you on Instagram for quite a while. I loved your message. I loved sort of your vibe. I loved that you were open and talking about things that I was kind of thinking about, curious about, and you were open about your own sessions that you do, and how you enjoy helping others. So that was sort of the background. And then when everything seemed to go, from me last summer, it was one of those things where you were there and you said something that I'm sure I was just like, that touches me. This could help. I don't know. I've tried everything else, it feels like, and I just feel like this resonates with me. I'd really like to try this. And I'm so glad that I did. So yeah, I did stalk you. Well, I enjoyed you, we'll put it that way. And then the moment that I really needed you, it all transpired the way it needed to. So I wanted to ask you, and I know I kind of alluded to this earlier about my sessions, and that is, has there ever been anyone that got communication from their inner knowing that they didn't like, that they didn't want, that they were like, ew, uh, or just like, oh, that I wasn't expecting that, or oh, um, and I have to say, I didn't get that. And I guess I kind of feel like I know what you're going to say, because I imagine it probably doesn't hit like that for people. But what I did get was like, wow, like I wasn't expecting that, or I didn't think about that. Some of it was just amazing. Um, like that wouldn't have come from my mind. Like that definitely came from somewhere else, because that's an entirely different way to think about it or to see something, or something to consider I would have never considered. But I could see where there were certain things I was kind of like, I didn't want to have to deal with that. I don't want to talk about that. And yet it would come up, because we might not ask and talk about it, but it might come up, and I'd be like, So I'm just curious, has that been a thing for other people?
Yeah, it's totally been a thing for me too. It's one of those things where when that kind of feeling happens, it's like that's where you start to notice these different parts of ourselves, like because it's not the inner voice level that feels that way. Like the inner voice part of you, like whatever's coming through is like we're at peace with all that is. Like, even if it's inconvenient, even if it's uncomfortable, the inner voice is always going to be giving you the truth, like what you most need at that time. And it's always going to be like that kind of mind level that's like, but I don't want to. Like, or just like you said, like I don't want to look at that. And it's because it's uncomfortable. It's because it's like, maybe it'll make someone else upset. We imagine it may not even be true, but like sometimes we jump to those scenarios because your mind's trying to keep you safe, right? It's doing such a good job. And if anyone's ever done any kind of like inner child work, like that's all very wrapped up in the mind as well. Yeah, so that there may be that like inner 3-year-old who's like throwing a tantrum and is like, no, 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 no. And I have so much compassion for that because I do it too all the time. So yeah, so it's one of those things where in a way, like for me as the facilitator, it's exciting when that happens, not because I love clients being uncomfortable, but it shows me like if you think of like you're on a hiking trail and there's like a signpost or like a like go this way little sign, like that's what those moments are to me, is like that resistance is there for a reason. It's probably because you really need to go that way. The resistance wouldn't be happening otherwise, it'd be easy peasy. So
Right.
yeah, so it's interesting how like it kind of points towards areas of your highest transformation probably. And it's uncomfortable. So we just that's where it is really helpful to have that aspect of being with the body, because then if we're just feeling like ugh, like cringy about it, okay, where do you feel that in your body? We can just be with that, let that feeling be there and like play itself out, and then we can move forward. But when we get wrapped up in the like cringy, like I don't wanna, and we let that sort of like stay a roadblock and we just believe that as the end all be all truth, then you can't go anywhere. So I feel like the
Right.
whole process of these sessions helps to keep us moving forward through our life, even when those really uncomfortable things come up. So yeah, it's a great question.
I think you hit on something I'd like to ask you. In addition to that, is does it help or is it necessary to come to these sessions kind of willing to face what comes up and willing to kind of just be with these things? Because I imagine, I was at a point where I certainly don't want to say it was the worst part of my life, because as I've said, I've had PTSD. I've had some really low points in the life. But I was definitely kind of broken in a way that was different, because it was different things hitting me in different ways. And I was very much open to seeing things differently, um and addressing things, even if I didn't like it. And I think part of what I was surprised with was the reality of, this is it, this is how you feel. Like, it was almost presented to me like, you don't want to admit this is how you feel, or this is what you're trying to be nice about it, even to yourself, but this is the reality of what you feel. So you just need to address that, and let's move on. And that was kind of icky. I didn't like that, but I was willing. Like you said, what you do with it after that, the first part is you got to know and you got to be able to address it. Do you find that people maybe don't, like you said, some people just don't really resonate, or don't find they get anything from it if they're not willing to kind of face what comes up, or they're not willing to to do anything with that information?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think a certain level of openness is helpful. And that said, like, I never want to like plant this idea that you have to come to these sessions perfect or like,
Mm.
so clean, I've no issues, like I'm coming to heal, but like I figured it all out. Like like this isn't like, I don't know, some bougie like resort healing spa place. This is a messy stuff.
Yeah.
This is,
Yeah, that
yeah,
was
like
my
we,
experience. I was definitely messy coming to you, that's for sure.
yeah, and I'm messy. So like I'm very much like, I don't know, I like to be down to earth about how we approach this. So yeah, in terms of like, do people have to, I think the most helpful thing is under like being at a point where you're like, well, actually you kind of said this, like, well, I've tried everything else. Like, you know, so sort of like being willing to just try something new to maybe get a new result. I have a client who came to me recently who has experienced a ton of like internal resistance and like doesn't really trust their body, like received a lot of conditioning about like your body's not trustworthy and things like that. And so they came in, I think maybe similar to you in a sense of being like, where's my inner voice? Like, what is this? I don't hear anything. Um, but they had that drive to get there. They had the desire to get there. It's not so much about working hard, in the sense of using the word drive, but like if you're just, yeah, willing to take the baby step, if you're willing to see it a little differently, that's great. And like, I'm a very stubborn person, I'll say. So I love to work with people who like have a very, we could say like a strong mind, who's just like, this is hard, I don't like it, it doesn't feel good, meh. Like, that like tantrumy child. Um, but there's still that part of them that's like, well, but there's something here. Like I feel something about it. There's some kind of a pull. So even if the mind is like throwing a tantrum the whole way, if there's still that little bit of a pull, if there's still that desire to experience it, I think that's enough. And like, and we meet the mind or that inner child or whoever where it is the whole way through. And I love to just like extend a lot of compassion to that. And like, there's really no point in judging.
Yeah.
If someone's like being really stubborn and they don't want to be there, that's different, I think. But, if there's anything we're talking about that resonates with you and there's a desire to, again, like maybe try something different to maybe get a different result, then I think that's great. Yeah. So that's what I like to pose to people if they're like, I don't know, it seems hard. I don't know if it's right for me. I'm like, well, um, if you've tried something else that's working for you, amazing. I'm not going to tell you to not do that. If you haven't found anything that really works for you in order to maybe process through some of this like stuckness in your life or these big questions or whatever it is, or you feel like you have a desire and you can't get there in whatever area of life, and you just want to like try a new approach to it, if nothing else has worked for you, okay, this is here. Like we can just see what happens. It's all an
I
experiment.
totally agree. I mean, and I would even say now that I've done it, you wouldn't have to necessarily get to that point to try it and receive really good benefits. But uh, that's where I came from. So, yeah. Well, so I appreciate you kind of walking us through this. This is amazing because I do want other people to know that this is something that's available. It's not scary. It's not, it's very convenient. And I just can't say enough good things about it as a tool in a very large tool shed or tool chest of ways to deal with. And you don't have to have trauma to, like, you could just have just, you just want more focus, more clarity, more, you just want to really dive into yourself. There's a lot of different ways you can come at this, and it would still be extremely beneficial, I think, and find. So that's why I wanted to share this with everybody. And I'm so thankful that you came on today to share that with us. Um, there's a couple things I wanted to ask you because I always ask my guests a couple of questions to kind of get to know them a little bit more and to just kind of add a little more information for help for our people that are watching. I wanted to ask you. I imagine you probably have a really good book that you'd like to recommend that you really enjoy, and I'm curious as to what that is. If you have a book that you really like and why.
Yeah. I have a whole stack next to me. Um, if I show this, is it going to be backwards? I don't know if it will. Oh, it
Oh
will, but
no,
that's
it
okay.
says The Power of Now. Or at
Okay.
least I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. He's great. I like to watch him on YouTube, but this book of his is a really great way of like kind of understanding human consciousness in the kind of like angle that we're talking about here. He talks a lot about the mind, and he talks about the pain body, which is like sounds scary, but it's all the same stuff we've been talking about, the like feeling the sensations in the body and sort of transmuting that. Um, so he doesn't talk about like the term inner voice, but I think he talks about things that are very much parallel to this.
Mm.
And I just find him a really lovely teacher. So that's a great book for me.
Well, I have to tell you, I don't recall it being that book. I know he's got several books, and I feel like it's another one. I can't remember the title right offhand, but it was Eckhart Tolle, and it was pivotal for me. So anytime I hear Eckhart Tolle, I'm like, yes. You know, it some of the concepts aren't new. Sometimes, like the it is what it is. But the way he described it and explained it, or if you, as you said, the power of now, like we're always talking about being mindful and being in the moment, but the way he really goes on into it, I was like, it really, it blew my mind and really, it really helped me. Again, that's been so long ago, probably. Well, we won't say, but it was very helpful years ago when I read it. Okay, let me ask you one last question then, and that is the best advice you've ever received.
Yeah. I sat with my inner voice on this one because I those big questions, I'm like, I don't know. I've been alive for a while. I don't know the best advice. So I kind of sat with that question to see what would come up. And there were a few things. One thing that came up was I don't know if you've seen on Netflix this documentary called Stutz. It's about a therapist, actually, but it's really fantastic watch. And I wrote this down when I was watching it because one of the
Is
things he
that the one
says,
that has Jonah Hill?
yeah,
Yes, I
it's really good.
did.
Um,
Yes.
one of the things he says is the worse the adversity, the greater the opportunity, which I guess goes back to what we were talking about like that big resistance that can come up, like go that way. So that's one thing that I've loved. Yeah, and then my inner voice has said some other things to me that like it keeps bringing up the same things because I'm like I need the reminder again. So one of those things is just to like be aware of the mind, like witness the thoughts without having to believe the thoughts are me. Like I am my thoughts when I'm thinking. If it's like ruminating on the past or being dissatisfied with something, like we can really just observe that part of ourselves. And I find a lot of freedom there. So that's really lovely. It's a practice for sure. Um, it's easy to get lost in the tunnel vision, but yeah, you can build that muscle. Um, and yeah, feeling your feelings as sensations in the body is another one. This is one where like new clients are sort of working through this with me, and they're like, I don't know, it feels big, it feels everywhere, it's so overwhelming. And I'm like, okay, how big is it? How intense does it feel? Where is it in your body? And it starts to become more like less big and scary, and it starts to transmute all on its own. If it's like pain or anxiety or constriction, whatever in the body that's uncomfortable, just feeling it as a sensation in the body instead of like the story of where did it come from and what does it mean and what does it mean about me and all that stuff. Um, And another one is the last one I'll give is like, uh, if we're ever like in like fixating on another person or like this person's causing me whatever, like I'm unhappy with them. You can ask your inner voice how it sees that other person and like prepare to be amazed. Because
Oh, wow.
yeah, because if you're ever thinking like this person's the cause of like my whatever, you know, if you think of like trouble with parents, trouble with kids, trouble with like anybody in your life, your boss, um, just yeah, going to that part of you that lives in unconditional love, seeing how they feel about that person. And then it might sound like, oh, but like I don't want to let them off the hook or I don't want to be a doormat or something, but I don't know, it's just interesting to consider like how would life be different for a lot of us if we met everyone from that place of
Mm,
unconditional love. Not that we're like meant to be the image of perfection all the time. We're human
right.
beings. That's okay. But yeah, it's just a much lighter, more lovely feeling way to meet life.
Wow.
So yeah.
That one I'm going to try, and I'm going to report back to you, because that I think could be really what I try to do with a lot of people that I find very frustrating or annoying or whatever, is to say, okay, what do I know about this person? What probably elicited this? Like, maybe they had an overbearing parent, maybe they have, a challenging marriage, maybe they're a single parent, maybe, I try to create a story that helps me to find some area of softness to them. But it would be very interesting to get that input and say what it is, because what I'm imagining, and I don't know that this is true, is that it would come from a perspective of, this is what this person is challenging you, or the resistance you have is, what is this, what's in you that you don't like, or this, those are the types of things I could see it coming back with, and going back to that whole, ew, that's not what I really wanted to hear. Right.
Yeah.
uh but I think it could be very helpful and pivotal in moving forward. If you want to move forward more quickly, and you want to address the issues that you have, that would get you there quicker. I have no doubt about that. If you're open to it and you would just listen, and even if you don't even do anything with it, if you just hear it, I think there's probably just progress in that alone. But
Yeah.
yeah, I can't imagine I'm going to really enjoy that. But I've got several people, as you said that, I was thinking, oh, I've got a list of people that I really should be asking my voice about. Let's roll them up and get it going here. So I'll definitely have to report back on that. But yeah, I think that's very interesting. Well, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, those were some great advice. I definitely feel you on some of those. I've often heard too that if you can name the feeling, that it makes it manageable, or it's not as you said, big and overwhelming, that you can then know what to do with it, what shelf to put it in. It's when feelings get away. And I think part of my problems in the past have always been that the feelings happen, and before I can really kind of identify or deal with them, they just start glomming on together, and now I've just got this big old wad of feelings, that some are good, some are bad, some are just, and it's a big mess. So but so I appreciate this so much, because I think this is such a tool to help for a lot of different areas. And I appreciate so much that you have helped us to understand a new and different way that we could access helpful information that can move us forward, and help us heal a lot of different areas, just like me with, so many things I was trying to process: grief, and changing roles, and health issues, and like, what is going on? Why did it all have to hit all at the same time? Like, my goodness, uh, what is going on here? And boy, did I get the response. So
Ask and you shall receive.
ask and you shall receive, for sure. But here we are a year later, and I'm very thankful, and I think I'm doing a lot better as a result. I could have easily been stuck, and I'm definitely not stuck. I've not been stuck. I've been moving forward. It's been up and down, but I've been moving forward. So we'll take that. Well, thank you so much. And can you give us a little bit of information of how we can, those watching, you mentioned Instagram. What are all the ways that people can get in touch with you and find you to either ask you more questions or to sign up for the Vitality activation sessions?
Yeah. So to book those sessions or to read about them, see testimonials, that is on my website at lornastellintuitive.com. I'm on Instagram at Lorna Stell, and you can find me on Facebook, just on my personal profile as well, under the same name. Um, I post more, I would say, on Facebook and maybe Instagram stories. I have a love-hate relationship with social media, but yeah, I do like to sort of share those aha moments or like client wins, those breakthrough moments when I can. Yeah, and then yeah, please DM anytime with questions or my email's on my website too. I like to just sort of be available as a resource for people, even if, like I said, they're not sure if this is for them. Yeah, I'm here if you have questions.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have that below in the blog on the website and on YouTube so people can find and easily click as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you sharing with us, Lorna, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be empowered. Be your own self advocate. Check out our website, hopehwa.com.